Hello everybody out there, it's Jeremy again. I am back with another video for Life by the Square Inch. This is going to be a video, a three-part question answering video to go along with the My 30-Day World Challenge, though technically it has elapsed. I fell behind, a couple of reasons for that, but I won't go into them. To go in conjunction with Absolute Tabletop's Kickstarter for the Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin, which did successfully fund. So I'd like to play some catch-up. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and answer 3 days worth of questions here, and that should leave me with 2 more videos of 3 questions apiece, and then I should be able to be finished. So today I am going to be discussing questions number 22, 23, and 24. So first up, question number 22. What prominent fantastical bodies of water are there? First off, Rostveen. There is a chain of lakes called the Footprints of the Gods, which people believe were actually formed when an enormous being trod across the land. One river on the continent of Pedrum actually disappears into a massive hole in the ground, and there's also an incredibly large lake which has formed in the top of a dormant volcano. In Arath, the only true bodies of water on Arath are all located on the Hetust side of the world. These 6 locales, the Bay of Helfgar, the Bay of Frothdane, Hygelax run, the Martyrs Sea, the Sea of Roalon, and the Norin Sea, are all tied to a deep chain of hot springs that actually keep the water from freezing over. The next setting is Acid Rain. The most prominent body of water in Cadian's Keep is the ocean that actually surrounds these prison islands. Though many of the prisoners have attempted to use this as a means of escaping back to the mainland, none have ever actually done so successfully. The waters immediately around the islands are actually crammed full of landmines, or, well, not technically landmines, just mines. And outside of that, Skynet's patrol boats will pick off anything that manages to get past those. The fourth setting is Dowrenland. Now, the Pool of Tears is definitely the most predominant body of water in Dowrenland. The level of this massive lake literally rises and falls with the sadness of the people that live here, and it has been rising as of late. But taking a cue from the scarring that I incurred as a child while watching the Neverending Story, this lake has kind of a swamp of sadness type thing going. Coming into contact with it or drinking it can cause a bout of really deep depression and feelings of hopelessness. Swimming in it, however, usually proves fatal because many of the poor souls simply give up and drown. The fifth setting is Caldera. Now, while there are many left to be discovered in the wild frontier of the Caldera territory, the one fantastical body of water that I'm going to go ahead and talk about today is Sweetwater River. It flows south out of the Anaron Mountains, north of Tall Shadow. This range is called Lehi Lexeokan Thapekunk by the Kiohe tribe, which actually translates to life spring, and it's a sacred ground to them. Now, the remarkable thing about this river's waters is that the name doesn't lie. Its waters are literally sweet, and nobody really seems to know why. The sixth setting is Chrome City. The only bodies of water really to be found anywhere in or around Chrome City are the puddles of gathered rainwater and whatever else happens to be mixed into them. The seventh and final setting is Momentum. In Momentum, the most predominant body of water is the Seas of Essence. Now, springing from a multitude of sources through the Grave Fields and the Ascended Isles, these waters actually flow towards the edge horizon before spilling out over the sides and into the Sea of Stars. Now, the elves, through the manufacturing of ether from the Colossia crystals, have been polluting the water of the seas for centuries. So that is question number 22. We're going to go ahead and move right into question number 23, which is, what's valuable in your world? Gold? Something else? First up again is Rostveen. So gold, platinum, and gemstones are certainly the standard of wealth in Rostveen. There's unquestionably other things as well, mind you, but many of those things are worth more, kind of depending on where and whom the situation might be dictating. Black jade, for example, is a very valuable commodity in the lands of Might Sea, and a few outside of this land would even know what they were looking at, much less really know of its true value. The second setting is Arath. Now, as I mentioned before, on the Tanthara side, water is the absolute as far as valuable goods goes. People often fight and die for water here. It's traded and used to gain favor, and it's always sought after. But on Hetust, there are some who gather a kind of peat moss near the mists called Tuzadorf, and this is actually used to fuel fire because animal fat, which would be another good source, is seen as a better source of food by most people. The third setting is Acid Rain. There are some in Cadian's Keep who still kind of cling to cash as having value, but most who survive understand that it really isn't worth anything more than the paper that it's printed on. However, guns, ammo, vehicles, gasoline, food, water, booze, drugs, sex, batteries, generators, etc. This is all stuff that people kill for one another here. And at times, when things get bad enough, there's actually just all-out wars. And that's great for ratings. The fourth setting is Dowrenland. Now, Dowrenland still uses the gold standard as a means of trade amongst most of the races and locations, except for the giants. For some reason, they seem to have an endless supply of it. They carry it with them in order to gain the things that they don't simply just take, but they have no apparent understanding of its worth anywhere else in the world. The fifth setting is Caldera. Gold eagles still trade hands more often than most other means of exchange, though barter is actually very common in the Caldera territory. The other thing is land claims and property rights. They can become extremely valuable, and especially if it's proven that there might be a cache of magic items buried beneath the surface. The sixth setting is Chrome City. Now, in Chrome City, nobility is certainly the most valuable possession that somebody can have here. However, that's normally a birthright, and one that the majority don't have the advantage of. So, that being said, an absurd amount of glint has been known in the past to materialize a new title out of nowhere. The last setting is Momentum. As I stated in a previous video, ether is definitely the precious commodity here. It's made by the elves from crystals that are believed to actually be the breath of the Colosseas, the god giants. Now, it powers flight and propulsion, as well as serves as a recreational drug for that kind of manifests euphoria and powerful hallucinations. Now, there's a massive black market that supports this, and of course, the smuggling rings that support that. So it's illegal in many parts of the world, and it's often hunted by people who really want to get rich quick. So that is question number 23. And we are going to roll right on along to question number 24. What is the tech level? Does magic integrate? Up first, once again, is Rostveen. Technology in Rostveen is kind of around the European medieval era, pretty typical for a lot of fantasy settings. There aren't any steam-powered machines or cogs or guns or anything like that. And magic is integrated fairly well for those that can afford it or who have the means to produce it themselves. Magic, especially in the way of transportation, comfort, or protection, is definitely one of the ways that prosperity can be shown in this setting. The second setting is Arath. On both sides of Arath, the technology is closer to probably the Middle Ages, with kind of a little bit of Conan thrown in. The few cities that do exist are grand centers for the wonders that the world does have to offer, but the wilderness is kind of a stark contrast by comparison. Now, steel is nominally present in any facet, and wood is completely absent outside of the gray. So the setting is heavily based on sword and sorcery. The third setting is Acid Rain. Now, I set Acid Rain in 2012, the future, because I really wanted to capture the feeling of the science fiction action films from the 1980s. Movies like Escape from New York and Total Recall, and Demolition Man and Judge Dredd. These places where the pseudo-technology that people were guessing or hoping would become a reality, and in the 30 years since, it hasn't really happened. But I wanted it to be recognizably contemporary, So there's no hovercrafts or laser guns or anything like that, but things still kind of tend to operate on gasoline, and bullets and explosions are still, a big thing. But you might expect to find kind of the odd drone or a holographic projector or a mech kind of lying around. The cutting edge technology would be kind of that stuff. The fourth setting is Daurenland. Now, technology in Daurenland is mostly in line with the Middle Ages of Europe as well, specifically of kind of Germany and England. Though there's certainly notable exceptions, such as clocks and watches and glass mirrors. But this is really kind of both so that the setting can encompass the different interpretations of the stories that it's based on, but also still utilize as much of the Dungeons and Dragons rules, since that's kind of what it's based in. The fifth setting is Caldera. Now, Caldera is the Wild West, so the technology here is squarely placed in that time period. Guns are a prominent feature, but they've not entirely replaced the need for melee weapons and armor quite as quickly as they did in our own history. The steam engine has certainly caught on, lending its power to locomotives that are now kind of connecting the far corners of the frontier, and even horseless carriages back east. And while there's certainly room for the odd kind of steampunk inventor adapting his knowledge to other arenas, that's very much not a common thing in the setting. The sixth setting is Chrome City. In Harbinger itself, which is Absolute Tabletop's setting, where I've placed Chrome City, the technology level exists somewhere between the swords of usual fantasy and the reclaiming science fiction treasures regathered from the Harbinger itself. But with Chrome City, I took a lot of artistic liberty, and it is decidedly more advanced, once again, more in line with kind of Blade Runner or Judge Dredd. That kind of grungy, dystopian futurescape laced with neon and crime. The seventh and last setting is Momentum. Now, this is a point that I'm kind of seesawing on a lot with Momentum. Fantasy is unquestionably my bread and butter, and that is where I'm going to be starting with the setting, but I know for a fact that ether-powered airships are a certain thing, and I'm pretty positive that the dwarves are going to be having brimstone cannons. There are still a few other things that I'm kind of toying with including that kind of push the level of technology here a little bit closer to Victoriana, but I'm just not sure of that yet, so we're just going to have to kind of wait and see. But that does it for question number 24. So that is 22, 23, and 24. And yeah, I guess that about does it. So thank you very much. This was once again a video for the Life by the Square Inch video series on the channel, the Erasmus Expeditions here. And until next time, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.